What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to talk about my experience so far with week 2 of the Black Ops 6 beta, because at least in my experience so far, the difference is night and day compared to last weekend, and for me, this game is playing significantly better now. Now, in saying that, the game is obviously not in a flawless state yet, and there's still work to be done, and I still do have some feedback. But I've got to say, especially compared to Tuesday or later on the first week of the beta, this is playing like an entirely different game for me, and I just wanted to share some of my experiences so far with week 2, as well as some of my experiences with the changes they made, which I did outline in one of yesterday's videos. So the first thing I want to talk about here is the desync. This was the huge issue that I had toward the end of the last week of the beta. It was on the Tuesday. There was an update that went live, and as soon as that update hit for me, the desync was out of control. Like, even when I had a decent ping, I would still feel like I was half a second behind everybody, and I was just getting insta-deleted by everything, and it felt like my enemies were playing hardcore, but I was playing core. This weekend, so far, it's like they flipped a switch, and I'm just not experiencing that at all anymore. So obviously, as a result of that, the game is playing significantly better for me, and I'm having a much more enjoyable experience. I don't feel like the enemies only need to shoot me twice to kill me, whereas I have to shoot them 4 or 5 times to kill them. And of course, when it comes to this, I'm speaking about my experience, and unfortunately, I've been seeing a lot of people with the complete opposite experience. In the first weekend, they weren't having any serious issues with this, but now in the second weekend, they are having these issues. So it does seem like this is something they still need to be working on and really dialing in to get everybody in a better place here. And it's likely what's going on here is last week, those players that are now having a big issue, they were on the good side of the desync, and therefore the game was much easier. And then maybe right now, I'm on the good side of the desync. Maybe I even have extra time to react to situations. Maybe I'm the one insta-deleting people in what feels like 2 bullets for them. I'm not too sure, but all I can say is, at least from my perspective, the game is playing much better when it comes to desync. Now, on a related note though, connection-wise, it's not perfect, and one of the big issues I'm still having with this game is the skips and stutters, and you're probably seeing some of that in the gameplay in the background. That's not my capture card or anything, that's actually happening in the match for me. And that's something where I think it's connection related, but it might even just be stability related. It might have to do with the actual optimization of the game itself. I'm not entirely sure, but whatever's causing that really needs to get worked out, because it gets really bad in some matches. Now, I will say some matches are worse than others. Sometimes I'll go an entire match without really noticing any of them, but then other times it's happening so frequently that it's practically unplayable. In either case, after that, let's talk about spawns a little bit, because this is something where they did make some changes from the first weekend to the second, and as far as game design issues that I had with the first weekend of the game, spawns were definitely on top. That was my biggest complaint with the actual gameplay design. And this weekend, outside of Babylon, we'll talk about that one in a little bit, in my experience, the spawns are very noticeably better than the first weekend. Now, are they 100% fixed? Are they perfect right now? No, definitely not. There's still room for improvement. I'm still running into some very questionable spawn situations here or there, and a lot of really bad ones on Babylon. But just referring to the general spawn logic, it is feeling significantly better for me. I'm noticing far fewer situations where enemies are spawning in pockets all over the map, and it's just flipping all over the place, spreading enemies out, and just destroying the flow of the match. In my experience with the second weekend, it seems like map control is a thing again, at least to a degree. And when it comes to those spawn flips, they're a lot more obvious and intuitive. And as a result of this, I do find the flow of the gameplay has been noticeably improved for the second weekend, with the one big exception being Babylon. That's the new map they just added for this weekend. And not only is it a very small map for a core map for 6v6, I believe it's actually going to be the smallest core map in the game, not strike map, but core map. But even outside of the fact that it's really small, the spawns are really, really rough right now. And I'm guessing a big part of that is due to the fact that they haven't collected a ton of data from the community from the first weekend of the beta on Babylon to make those necessary adjustments. I'm hoping that's at least a lot of it. I don't think they'll ever be able to get spawns in a flawless state on Babylon with it being so small, but it could definitely be significantly better than what we're currently dealing with on that map. Next up, when it comes to judging the changes they made from week 1 to week 2, let's talk about weapon balance a little bit, because for the first week, definitely by the end of it at least, the Jackal completely took over, and it was just what you were running into like 80% of the time, if not more. Some matches, it seemed like literally every person in the lobby was using the Jackal. And in the second weekend, after the nerfs that took place to the Jackal, I have noticed more variety overall. Now, of course, there's still plenty of people using that gun. I think a lot of that is just inertia. It's a lot of people that were really used to using it in the first weekend, and maybe it's the only gun they fully maxed out and leveled up, so they've got lots of attachments for it, and therefore, with the second weekend, they're just still gravitating toward that gun despite the nerfs. In my experience though, balance-wise, up close, I'm dominating Jackal users with the C9. It is the better SMG within 15 meters. And then outside of that 15 meters or so, this is where the assault rifles start to take over. And I would rather now have an assault rifle in my hands beyond about 15, 20 meters compared to a Jackal. So I still consider that gun to be a very versatile option. It's still a good gun, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they nerfed it into the ground and it's bad, but I do think a lot of people are sort of stuck to using it because they were so used to it in the first weekend, when they would actually be performing a little bit better if they branched out and tried some of the other guns out there. In general though, I feel much more confident branching out myself. Part of that is due to the desync issues as well. I feel like I've got a little more time to react to situations now compared to the first weekend, and that allows me to branch out and use some more of the weapons. After that, another fairly minor but noticeable change I made from the first weekend to the second is to the mantle speeds as well as the weapon swap speeds. I've definitely noticed those feel better in the second weekend. The first weekend, it just felt painfully slow to perform actions like that. Whereas now, even without the fast hands perk, which we also have access to, and that's great to have as well, but even without that, I'm noticing that swapping to a pistol doesn't feel quite as punishing as it did last week. You're still putting yourself at a disadvantage for a period of time, but it doesn't feel as punishing as week 1. But then finally, for the notable changes I want to talk about a little bit from week 1 to week 2, this is footstep audio. The big issue with footstep audio in week 1 I noticed is the footstep sounds just weren't playing all the time. So sometimes you'd hear footsteps just fine, but then other times people would sprint right up to you, even in a quiet environment, and you wouldn't hear their footsteps at all. And that was due to the fact that other sounds were taking priority and causing that footstep audio to literally just not play at all. In the second weekend, I've noticed a lot more consistency with footstep audio, so it seems like it's always playing that audio now. However, I'm still quite happy with the current level of footstep audio. They might have also made it very slightly louder, but it's not crazy loud like the past couple of Call of Duty games when not using the counter perk, like in the case of Modern Warfare 3 at least. And what this means overall is I have felt a little more comfortable in a quiet situation at least, knowing that an enemy isn't going to literally sprint right up behind me and kill me without me ever hearing their footsteps. Unless they're using the ninja perk, of course. However, in a louder environment, if there's gunshots going off around me, I don't expect to be able to hear enemy footsteps. Gunfire should absolutely be louder than enemy footsteps. And I also notice I'm not hearing footsteps from like a ridiculous distance away through several walls like you can in some of the recent Call of Duty games, and that's great as well. I really feel like they're trying to take a careful approach with footsteps so the ninja perk doesn't become an absolute crutch in respawn game modes, and based on my experience so far in the second weekend, I still think they're hitting that mark, but I think it's starting to get to the point where, at least in my experience, if they get any louder with it or they extend that range any more, then it may start to become an issue, and I may start to feel as though I need to use the ninja perk to move around the map aggressively in respawn game modes. And there we go. That is going to wrap it up for some of the thoughts I had just coming from week 1 to week 2 of the beta for Black Ops 6. Now, this isn't my final beta review or anything. I'll be doing that after the beta ends, so there's still plenty of feedback that I have to give. I'm definitely not saying that all the problems are fixed and the game is perfect in week 2. I just wanted to share some of my experiences and share the fact that, for me at least, I am noticing some pretty significant improvements from the first week to the second. Now, of course, those are just my experiences though, and I know there's going to be a lot of people with different experiences, so I just want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. For those of you guys that played in the first weekend and now are playing in the second, how are things going for you? Are they generally feeling better than the first week? Or not so much? Are you maybe on the other side of things where things suddenly got worse for you? I'm really curious to hear both sides of things. Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.